Member Jackie Dean.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Chairman, for the opportunity to speak on the Statutes Amendments Bill. And as my fellow committee member over the House noted, this is an omnibus bill which is designed to deal with a number of non-controversial issues. And so it does. And it has been I thought it was a good select committee process. We did indeed call for submissions. There weren't a lot of them. We did note a couple of things as the bill went through the select committee process. Probably the one I want to highlight first of all is under the Statistics Act, and there was a small issue, and that came out of clause 1562 of the bill. We would have recommended an amendment, but however, reprinting the bill, and it's quite a substantial bill because it has a number of statutes in it, we felt was not justified by a single minor amendment which should be addressed at the Committee of the Whole stage and indeed will be. And so we consider that the words "in each place where it appears" should be added to the end of clause 1562 of the bill as the term enumerator, which would be replaced by the term collector, appears more than once in section 26(3) of the Statistics Act of 1975. So, Mr Chair, there are a couple of other interesting, and you can go through one can go through the Statutes Amendment Bill and find a number of interesting statutes that to be amended, and one of them was the Conservation Act, and that was one of those which the committee found quite interesting. Amending the Conservation Act, several things are going to change as a result of the Statutes Amendment Bill. First of all, meetings of Fish and Game Councils, which is dealt with under 26ZD7, is amended by omitting 3 months and substituting 4 months, pretty non-controversial and sensible, and also using hazardous substances to catch or destroy fish. And so that's section 26ZR amended by repealing subsection 2 and substituting the following subsection, which says to subsection 1 does not apply to actions taken by a warranted officer, a fish and game ranger, or any person authorised in writing for the purpose by the Director-General, the Director or the appropriate Fish and Game Council. There were a couple more amendments within the Conservation Act. I just highlight this particular amendment as an example of one of the 74 amendments, 47, I beg your pardon, of one of the 47 statutes administered by 15 different government agencies, and 196 clauses in total in this bill. And it was the Select Committee's job to go through each and every one of those 47 statutes, examine them for whether or not they were to be controversial, examine them for whether or not the amendment made sense, and in most places it did. And the Select Committee did a pretty robust process of that, and I had thought at the time had come to a pretty good agreement on how we would be returning this bill to the House for the committee stage. So, Mr Chair, with those few words, my contribution is almost at an end. I would probably just talk about, yes, so soon, thank you, colleague, but I would probably just mention the Copyright Act 1994. And again, this was an interesting amendment contained in this bill, and it amends the definition of a prescribed library to cover law libraries provided and maintained by the New Zealand Law Society, because the old District Law Society libraries have now been taken over by that organisation under the reforms implemented by the Lawyers and Conveyancers Act 2006. And so that was, well, it was quite an interesting statute to have a look at, because I know of a law library I know particularly well, and I have seen the people coming in, cutting and pasting and sellotaping bits into the statutes, and so I'm a little bit familiar with that. Also, the Electoral Act 1993. The bill amends the Electoral Act by removing the obligation for a party to an intended marriage or civil union to provide information to the Register General, but requires the Register General to provide details of registered marriages and civil unions to the Chief Register of Electors. So, while that might seemingly be a minor amendment, I would suggest it's quite significant to a number of people. Probably the final amendment I will raise is the Juries Amendment Act 2008. And in this, the bill provides that the registrar may permit a person, Mr Chair. Thank you, Mr Chair. I just wanted to finish off my contribution on the Juries Amendment Act. And so that provides that the registrar may permit a person summoned to attend as a juror on an occasion to defer that person's attendance to serve as a juror to a time within a period that starts at least 8 weeks and ends no later than 1 year after the date on which that person is required to attend under the summons. And so that provides a little bit of leeway. It seems eminently sensible, and that was one of the other statutes which was considered and approved by the committee. Thank you, Mr Chair.